haven't told anyone the full story of why I moved out of that apartment. Even now, 3 months later, I still check over my shoulder when I'm walking to my car. My sister thinks I'm paranoid. My best friend suggested therapy, gently, over coffee last week. Maybe they're right, but they weren't there. They didn't see his smile. It started in August, that suffocating kind of August where the heat makes everything shimmer and distort. My previous roommate, Jenna, got engaged to her boyfriend of 6 months, one of those whirlwind romance things that makes you either believe in fate or question someone's judgment. She moved in with him 2 weeks after he proposed, leaving me with a lease I couldn't afford and a second bedroom that echoed when I walked past it. I lasted exactly 5 days before the math became unavoidable. Rent was due in 3 weeks. My savings account had enough for maybe 1 month solo, 2 if I stopped eating anything that wasn't rice or eggs. So I did what thousands of desperate 20-somethings do. I posted on the roommate finder apps, Craigslist, Roomster, Spare Room. I even swallowed my pride and posted in the local university's housing Facebook group, knowing I'd be competing with landlords offering amenities I couldn't match. The responses came fast. Too fast, maybe. Within 6 hours, I had 23 messages. A 19-year-old who asked if I was chill with parties. A guy whose profile picture was a close-up of his motorcycle. Someone who opened with, "Do you believe in manifestation?" 3 separate people who wanted to negotiate rent and cryptocurrency. One message was just the word "sup" with 5 fire emojis. I was deleting the 20th message, this one from someone who claimed to be an aspiring social media influencer and needed good lighting for content, when Andrea's message came through. It was normal. God, it was so wonderfully normal. "Hi, I saw your post about the apartment. I'm 26, work as a dental hygienist, pretty quiet, clean, and I keep regular hours. I'm looking to move by the end of the month if possible. Would love to know more about the place and neighborhood. Thanks. Andrea." Her profile showed a woman with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, mid-laugh in most photos. There were pictures of her at what looked like family barbecues, someone's graduation party, a hiking trail with autumn leaves. She had 300-something friends, posts going back years, a real person with a real life. We messaged back and forth over the next few days. She asked reasonable questions. Was parking included? How were the utilities split? Did I have any pets? Was there a washer-dryer in the unit or in the building? She wrote in complete sentences with actual punctuation. When I mentioned I worked from home twice a week, she said that was perfect because she left for the dental office at 7:30 and usually wasn't back until after 6. "I'm pretty quiet generally," she wrote. "Honestly, I'll probably just be the person who makes dinner and watches Netflix in my room most nights. My last roommate said I was so quiet she sometimes forgot I was home, lol." She seemed perfect. Maybe too perfect. But I was running out of time and options. The 19-year-old party enthusiast had started sending me daily follow-ups. The motorcycle guy had found my Instagram and commented, "Looking good," on a photo from 2 years ago. I needed Andrea to be real. When she offered to come see the apartment that Saturday at 2 and said she could pay first month's rent up front if it worked out, I felt the knot in my chest loosen for the first time in a week. I spent Saturday morning cleaning like I was preparing for a military inspection. I scrubbed the bathroom until the grout was 3 shades lighter. I put fresh towels on the rack in what would be her bathroom, the nice ones I usually saved for guests. I even bought a lavender-scented candle and lit it in the living room, hoping it would make the place smell welcoming instead of like the slightly musty carpet that had been there since the building was constructed in the 90s. At 1:45, I checked my phone. No messages. I refreshed my email. Nothing. The candle burned down, filling the apartment with a smell that was starting to feel less like lavender and more like trying too hard. 2 o'clock came and went. By 2:15, I was refreshing our message thread every 30 seconds. By 2:25, I'd moved to the window, watching the parking lot for any unfamiliar cars. At 2:30, I texted her. "Hey, just checking if you're still coming? No worries if something came up." I added the exclamation points to seem breezy, unbothered. I was bothered. I was mentally calculating if I had time to message the motorcycle guy back. The response came within seconds, like she'd been holding her phone, waiting. "OMG, yes, I'm so sorry. My GPS is being ridiculous. I'll be there in just a few minutes. So sorry." I exhaled. Okay, fine. GPS issues. That happens. I checked my reflection in the microwave's glass door, smoothed my hair, tried to arrange my face into something friendly but not desperate. At 2:45, the doorbell rang. I crossed the living room, painted on my most welcoming smile, and looked through the peephole. A man stood there. Not a young woman with dark hair and a ponytail. A man, maybe in his mid-50s, with a receding hairline and shoulders that seemed too broad for the button-down shirt he was wearing. Khakis pressed with a crease down the front. Leather loafers. He looked like someone's dad, the kind who coaches Little League and grills burgers at block parties. My hand froze on the deadbolt. He rang the doorbell again. I watched his distorted fisheye face through the peephole as he glanced down at his watch, then back at the door. Patient. Waiting. I slid the chain lock into place before I opened the door, just wide enough to see him properly. "Can I help you?" Up close, I could see the smile lines around his eyes, the silver threading through his hair at the temples. He smiled when he saw me, warm and paternal. "Hi there, I'm Andrea's father." He had a slight southern accent, the kind that made every sentence sound friendly. "She asked me to come check out the place first, if that's all right. You know how it is. Father's prerogative. Want to make sure my little girl's going to be safe. She's had some bad experiences with roommates before, so I promised I'd scope things out." The words were right. The tone was right. But something felt wrong in a way I couldn't name, like when you smell gas but can't see the leak. "Oh," I said, keeping my voice light. "She didn't mention you were coming instead of her." "Yeah, she tried to text you, but I think it didn't go through." He pulled out his phone, glanced at it, shook his head with practiced frustration. "Cell service in this neighborhood is terrible. We were noticing that on the drive over. Couldn't get Google Maps to load at all." He tucked the phone back in his pocket and met my eyes. "Mind if I come in and take a quick look? I'll just be 5 minutes tops. Want to check the locks on the windows? Make sure the doors are secure. You know how dads are." His smile never wavered. That was what bothered me, I realized. It never changed, never reached his eyes or shifted with the conversation. It was painted on. "I'd rather wait for Andrea to see it herself," I said, keeping my tone apologetic but firm. "No offense. I just think she should be the one to decide if she likes it." No, I completely understand." He nodded, took a small step back like he was giving me space. "She's actually waiting in the car right now. She's a little shy about these things, gets anxious meeting new people. Social anxiety, you know? Her therapist has been working with her on it, but it's still hard for her. I told her if she just lets me take a look first, then she'll feel more comfortable coming up, sort of ease her into it." I leaned slightly to look past him. There was a silver sedan parked near the curb, engine running. I could see exhaust drifting in the afternoon heat, but the windows were heavily tinted. I couldn't make out anyone inside. "Why doesn't she just come up with you?" I asked. "If she's nervous, having you there might help." Something flickered across his face. Not anger exactly, more like recalculation. The smile tightened at the corners. "Look, I'm not trying to be difficult here," he said, his voice still friendly but with a new edge underneath. "Do you want a roommate or not? Because Andrea's got 3 other places she's looking at today. I'm just trying to help my daughter find somewhere safe to live. I'm trying to be a good father. But if you're going to make this complicated..." He spread his hands in a "what can you do" gesture. I stepped back and shut the door. Not a slam. That felt too aggressive, too emotional. Just a firm, decisive close. I turned the deadbolt, slid the chain back into place. Through the peephole, I watched him stand there, absolutely still. The smile was gone now. His jaw worked like he was chewing on words he decided not to say. Then, slowly, he turned and walked back down the hallway toward the stairs. I moved to the window, careful to stay behind the curtain. He crossed the parking lot, got into the driver's seat of the silver sedan, and then he just sat there, staring up at my building. I counted the seconds. 30, 60, 90. My phone was in my hand before I consciously decided to pick it up. "Your dad just left. This whole situation is really weird. I don't think this is going to work out." I watched the screen. 3 dots appeared immediately, like she'd been holding her phone, waiting for my message. "What are you talking about? My dad's in Florida. He hasn't been to this state in 2 years. The words appeared on my screen, and everything in my apartment seemed to tilt slightly. I read it again, then a third time. My hands were shaking when I typed back. A man just came to my door saying he was your father and needed to check out the apartment before you saw it. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. I could picture her on the other end, typing and deleting, trying to find the right words. Finally, I never sent anyone. I don't know who that was. I'm freaking out now. I'm not coming. I'm so sorry. Please be careful. I looked out the window again. The car was still there. The man's head was tilted back against the headrest. He could have been napping. He could have been watching my window in the side mirror. Are you sure? I typed, knowing it was a stupid question but needing to ask anyway. Could it be a relative or family friend trying to help? No. I'm an only child, and my dad would never. This is really scary. I'm deleting my profile. I'm sorry. I watched as her 3 dots appeared one more time, then vanished. Her profile picture disappeared from the message thread, replaced by a gray silhouette. When I searched for her name in the Facebook group, I found nothing. She was gone. I called the non-emergency police line. The dispatcher listened to my story with professional patience, asked for my address, said they'd send someone when a unit was available. Is the individual currently on the property? She asked. He's in a car outside. Has he threatened you or attempted to enter without permission? No, but an officer will be there as soon as one becomes available. If he approaches you or attempts to gain entry, call 911 immediately. I kept watching. The car sat there for another hour. I memorized the license plate, wrote it down on 3 different pieces of paper, texted it to myself. When the police officer finally arrived, a bored-looking woman in her 40s who kept one hand near her radio, the silver sedan was pulling out of the parking lot. She took my statement in my living room, writing in a small notebook with a pencil she kept having to lick. Did he make any threats? No. Did he try to force entry? No. Has he contacted you since then? No, but he was sitting out there for over an hour. Ma'am, I understand this felt uncomfortable, but without a specific threat or illegal action, there's not much we can do. She handed me a case number on a small card. If he comes back, call 911. If you receive any threatening messages or he attempts contact again, we can explore a restraining order. In the meantime, keep your doors locked and consider getting a security camera. After she left, I triple-checked every lock. I went around the apartment testing window latches, making sure the sliding door to my tiny balcony wouldn't budge. I left all the lights on. That night, around midnight, I was lying in bed scrolling mindlessly through my phone, anything to avoid the silence, when a notification popped up. Friend request from a profile with no picture. The name was just numbers, 785-4932. My thumb hovered over the notification. Every instinct screamed not to click. I clicked anyway. The profile had been created that day. There were no friends, no information, no photos, except one post, made 10 minutes ago. It was a picture of my apartment building, taken from the parking lot. The angle was low, like someone had been sitting in a car. The caption said, 3rd floor, corner unit, yellow curtains. I sat up in bed so fast the room spun. Those were my curtains. IKEA, 3 years old, that specific shade of yellow Jenna had called aggressively cheerful. That was my exact apartment. I declined the request with shaking hands, blocked the profile, reported it to Facebook for harassment. Then I got up and closed every curtain in the apartment, yanking the yellow one so hard one of the hooks popped off the rod. I pushed my dresser in front of my bedroom door. It took 20 minutes and I threw out my back, but I couldn't sleep without it there. Even then, every sound in the hallway made my heart seize. Footsteps that might have been my neighbor or might have been him. The elevator chiming that might have been someone coming home or might have been him. Morning came gray and thin. I hadn't slept more than an hour. When I opened my door to check the hallway, I don't know what I was checking for, some sign he tried to get in, an envelope fell at my feet. No postage, no return address. Just my first name in neat block letters, like a teacher's handwriting on a report card. Inside was a printed copy of my original roommate finder post, my phone number at the bottom, not redacted. And beneath that, a list of my social media profiles: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, even my LinkedIn. A Tumblr I'd forgotten I made in college. Each one was on its own line, URLs printed in that same neat hand. On the back, someone had written, "Still looking for a roommate?" I called my sister from my car, threw clothes in a duffel bag while she was still saying hello. "I'm coming to stay with you," I said. "I'll explain when I get there." I stayed with her for 4 days. She lived an hour away, far enough that I could pretend I was in a different city, a different life. She didn't ask too many questions after I showed her the envelope. Just set me up in her guest room and made me promise to file a proper police report. When I finally went back to pack my things, I'd already decided I was breaking the lease. My landlord was in the lobby. "Oh, good, you're back," he said. "I wanted to mention, someone's been calling the office asking about you." My stomach dropped. "Who?" "Didn't leave a name. Asked if you lived alone when your lease was up, if you'd found a roommate yet." He shrugged. "Property manager thought it was weird enough to tell me. I figured maybe it was an ex or something." I paid the lease-breaking penalty that afternoon, $2,000 I didn't have, charged to a credit card that would take me a year to pay off. I found a new place across town through my sister's coworker, someone I met in person, whose references I checked 3 times. I deleted every roommate finder profile, made all my social media private, then deleted half of it, changed my phone number, started over. For 3 weeks, nothing happened. The nightmares faded. I stopped checking the parking lot every time I came home. My sister said I seemed better. Then I checked my mailbox at the new apartment. Mixed in with grocery store circulars and a water bill was a postcard. No stamp, which meant hand-delivered. The front showed a generic photograph of the city skyline, the kind they sell at tourist shops downtown. The back said, "Hope the new place works out better. The locks look stronger." My hands went numb. I walked back to my apartment, closed the door, sat on the floor with my back against it. The postcard was still in my hand. I read it over and over until the words stopped making sense. He knew where I lived. He'd been here, to this building I'd told no one about except my sister and the woman I was subletting from. He'd been close enough to examine my locks. I filed another police report. The detective was kind but frank. Without knowing who this person was, without a specific threat, without any attempt at contact or violence, they could document it but couldn't do much else. "He's towing the line," she said, "staying just legal enough that we can't act. But keep everything. Every message, every note. Build a case." I installed a Ring camera that day. Started varying when I left for work, taking different routes home. Stopped posting on social media entirely. Not just private, not just careful, but stopped. My life became small and quiet and constantly vigilant. Sometimes late at night, I think about that afternoon. I think about how normal Andrea's profile looked, how real. I wonder if she was ever a person at all, or if that whole identity was constructed just to get inside my apartment. I think about what would have happened if I'd let him in, if I'd believed him when he smiled and talked about father's instincts in checking locks. I think about the way he knew exactly which windows were mine, the way he'd been watching long enough to notice my curtains, their specific yellow shade, the careful way he'd documented my social media, printed it out like a shopping list. I still need a roommate. The rent here is only marginally more affordable than the last place, but I'd rather eat ramen for every meal, rather drain my savings to nothing, rather move back in with my parents at 27 than ever post on one of those sites again. Because whoever responded to my ad wasn't looking for a place to live. They were looking for something else entirely. And some nights, when I'm lying awake listening to footsteps in the hallway, testing the weight of my dresser against my door, I'm terrified they're still looking. After my divorce finalized in March, I decided to get a dog, something to come home to, you know? I adopted this goofy golden retriever mix named Biscuit from the shelter, and suddenly I had a reason to get out of the house every day. The problem was my new job had me working 10-hour shifts, and Biscuit needed walks I couldn't always provide. I found this app called Paw Pals that connects dog owners with local dog walkers. After looking through a few profiles, I hired someone named Vanessa. She had great reviews, a profile picture of her with 3 different dogs, and she'd been on the app for over a year. Her bio said she worked from home as a graphic designer and loved spending her breaks walking dogs in the neighborhood. We exchanged a few messages, and she seemed professional. I gave her my address and told her where I hid the spare key, under a fake rock by the side gate. She said she'd start coming by on weekdays around 1 p.m. I installed a pet camera in my living room so I could check on Biscuit during the day and make sure everything was going smoothly. The first week was perfect. I'd watch the camera on my lunch break and see Vanessa come in right on time, leash up Biscuit, and head out. She'd send me cute photos of him sniffing trees or playing at the park. Biscuit seemed happy, and I felt like I'd made a good choice. The second week, I noticed something small. On Wednesday, I checked the camera and saw that Vanessa had been in my living room for about 15 minutes before taking Biscuit out. She was just standing there, looking around. Not at her phone, not doing anything specific, just looking. When she finally leashed Biscuit and left, I brushed it off. Maybe she was tired. Maybe she was just spacing out. People do that. But then on Friday, I watched the live feed and saw her walk past the living room into my hallway. The camera didn't cover that area, so I couldn't see where she went, but she was gone for almost 5 minutes. When she came back, she had Biscuit and left normally. I felt uneasy, but I didn't have proof she'd done anything wrong. Maybe she'd used my bathroom. That's not weird, right? I didn't want to be paranoid. That weekend, I couldn't shake the feeling. On Sunday night, I went through my apartment carefully. Nothing seemed missing. But when I opened my bedside drawer, I noticed that things were slightly rearranged. The stack of books on my nightstand wasn't in the same order. My bathroom cabinet, where I keep medications and personal items, looked like it had been opened. Nothing gone, just disturbed. Monday morning, I texted Vanessa saying I needed to cancel her services for the week because my schedule had changed. She responded immediately, "No problem. Hope everything's okay. Let me know if you need me again." That afternoon, I came home during my lunch break to check the house myself. The spare key was gone. Not where I'd hidden it, not anywhere near the side gate. I tore apart the area looking for it, thinking maybe it had fallen, but it was just gone. I changed my locks that same day. I messaged Vanessa asking if she'd accidentally taken the spare key. She said she'd left it under the rock like always, and maybe someone else had taken it. She seemed confused and apologetic. I wanted to believe her, but something felt wrong. That night, around 9 p.m., Biscuit started barking at the back door. He never does that. I turned on the back porch light and looked outside. I didn't see anyone, but I could have sworn I heard footsteps on the gravel path that runs along the side of my house. I checked the pet camera footage from earlier in the day, during the times I knew I wasn't home. At 3:17 p.m., the camera caught movement. Just for a few seconds, someone walked past the front window. I couldn't see who it was clearly, but they were wearing a dark jacket. They paused, seemed to look toward my door, then walked away. I called the police. They came by, took a report, but said they couldn't do much since no one had actually tried to break in. They suggested I get a doorbell camera and be vigilant. I installed one that night. The next day, I checked Vanessa's profile on the Paw Pals app to leave a review or report my concerns. Her profile was gone, deleted entirely. I contacted the app's customer service, and they told me she deactivated her account the previous evening. They couldn't give me any more information due to privacy policies. I searched her name on social media. Nothing. I tried the phone number she'd given me through the app. Disconnected. It was like she'd never existed. 2 nights later, my new doorbell camera sent me an alert at 2:34 a.m. Someone was standing on my front porch. I pulled up the live feed on my phone and felt my blood turn to ice. A woman, I couldn't see her face clearly in the dark, was trying my door handle, just slowly turning it, testing if it was locked. Biscuit was barking like crazy. I called 911 and stayed on the line while the operator sent officers. By the time the police arrived 6 minutes later, she was gone. The doorbell footage showed her walking calmly down my driveway and disappearing down the street. The officer who reviewed the footage asked if I recognized her. I couldn't tell if it was Vanessa. The footage was too dark, too grainy. But then the officer pointed something out. "She's not hurrying. She's not acting like someone who's afraid of getting caught. She walked up to your door like she knew you were watching." That's when I noticed it. In the footage, right before she left, she turned and looked directly at the camera. Didn't try to hide her face, didn't flinch, just stared for 3 long seconds. Then she raised her hand and waved. I couldn't stay in that house anymore. I packed a bag and went to my parents' place that same night. The next day, I hired a locksmith to change all the locks again and install deadbolts. I had a security system put in with motion sensors on every door and window. Before I moved back in, I did a complete sweep of my house. That's when I found them. Little things. A phone charger that wasn't mine plugged in behind my couch. A hair tie on my bathroom counter that definitely wasn't mine. A coffee mug in my cabinet that I'd never seen before. It was like she'd been living there in small increments, leaving pieces of herself behind. The police opened an investigation, but without knowing Vanessa's real identity, they didn't have much to go on. The Paw Pals app cooperated and gave them what information they had, but it turned out Vanessa had used a fake ID to sign up. The payment information led to a dead end, a prepaid card purchased with cash. I ended up moving 3 months later. I couldn't shake the feeling that she had copied my new keys too, that she'd been in my house more times than I knew, that she'd learned my routines and habits. Every time Biscuit barked at night, I'd jolt awake in a panic. The worst part? I still don't know what she wanted. Money? My identity? Was she planning something worse? The detective told me that sometimes people get fixated on others for reasons that don't make logical sense. That didn't comfort me at all. I walk Biscuit myself now, no matter how long my shifts are. I don't use apps to invite strangers into my life anymore. And every time I come home, I check every room before I relax. Because for those weeks, someone had complete access to my space, my belongings, my life. They had a key. They knew when I'd be gone. And somewhere out there, Vanessa, or whatever her real name is, still knows where I used to live, still has photos of my dog, still remembers the layout of my home. I just have to hope she's moved on to someone else. But late at night, when I hear a noise outside, I can't help but wonder if she's decided to come back. I started my new job in September at an office about 45 minutes from where I live. The commute was killing me. Gas prices, wear on my car, sitting in traffic twice a day. When someone posted in the company Slack about starting a carpool, I jumped at it. There were 4 of us initially. Me, a woman named Priya from accounting, a guy named Josh from IT, and someone named Cameron who worked in marketing. We set up a rotation where each person would drive 1 week per month. It seemed like a great solution, and for the first month, everything was fine. Cameron was quiet. The kind of person who'd sit in the back seat with headphones on during the drive, occasionally joining conversations, but mostly keeping to themselves. When it was their week to drive, they'd show up exactly on time in a clean, newer model sedan and wouldn't say much beyond morning and have a good night. Honestly, I barely thought about them. Then Priya's father got sick, and she had to take a leave of absence to help her family. Josh got promoted and transferred to a different office across town. Suddenly, it was just me and Cameron carpooling. I suggested we find other people to join, but Cameron said they didn't mind it being just the 2 of us. I agreed, thinking it would only be temporary until we found others. That's when things started feeling off. Cameron began asking more personal questions during the drives. Where did I grow up? Did I live alone? What did I do on weekends? At first, I thought they were just being friendly since we'd be spending more time together, but something about the questions felt like an interview. One morning, Cameron picked me up and mentioned they'd seen me at the grocery store over the weekend. I didn't remember seeing them there, and I said so. They laughed and said, "Yeah, you were on the phone, pretty focused on your call. I didn't want to interrupt." That bothered me, but I couldn't articulate why. They'd seen me in public, so what? Still, I started feeling watched. The next week was my turn to drive. Cameron gave me their address for pickup, and when I pulled up to the apartment complex, they were already waiting outside. They got in and immediately said, "You took a different route than usual. Wellington Street instead of Maple." I had changed my route because of construction, but the fact that Cameron had noticed that they'd been paying that much attention to my driving patterns sent a chill down my spine. I just nodded and said, "Yeah, Maple's torn up right now." On Friday of that week, I found a notebook in my back seat after dropping Cameron off. It must have fallen out of their bag. I picked it up, thinking I'd return it on Monday, but when it fell open, I saw my name written on one of the pages. Not just once, dozens of times, in different pens. like they'd been practicing writing it or something. Below my name were bullet points. Lives in Parkside Apartments, Unit 12B. Usually gets coffee at Brewster's on Tuesday mornings. Drives a blue Honda Civic, license plate. They'd been documenting me. My routines, my habits, where I lived. My hands shook as I flipped through more pages. There were timestamps of when I left for work, notes about what I wore, even observations about my mood on different days. I didn't sleep that night. I called in sick on Monday and texted Cameron saying I had food poisoning and wouldn't need a ride for the rest of the week. They responded, "Feel better. I can drop off soup if you need anything. I remember where you live." That last sentence made my skin crawl. I hadn't told Cameron my specific apartment number, but it was written in that notebook. They'd found out somehow. I went to HR on Tuesday and explained the situation. I showed them pictures I'd taken of the notebook pages. They took it seriously and said they'd look into it, but they also said that since the carpool was an informal arrangement and happened outside work hours, there were limits to what they could do. They offered to talk to Cameron about professional boundaries. I told them no, that I didn't want Cameron to know I'd reported anything. I just wanted out of the carpool. HR understood and said they'd handle it discreetly. That afternoon, I got a Slack message from Cameron. "Hey, I think I left my notebook in your car. Mind if I grab it sometime?" I told them I'd leave it with the front desk receptionist. They sent back a sad face emoji and said, "Was hoping we could talk about it in person." I left the notebook at the desk in a sealed envelope with Cameron's name on it. I told the receptionist not to tell Cameron who dropped it off, just that it had been left for them. I also talked to building security at my apartment complex and asked them to keep an eye out for Cameron's car. For about a week, things were quiet. I started driving alone again, varied my schedule, took different routes to work. Then I got a text from an unknown number. "You didn't have to make things weird. I was just trying to be a good friend." I didn't respond. I blocked the number. 10 minutes later, a different number texted. "Ignoring me isn't going to make this better." I saved the screenshots and called the police. They told me to document everything but that, unless Cameron made a direct threat, it was hard to file a restraining order. They classified it as harassment and said I could file a report, which I did. The texts kept coming from different numbers. Some were apologetic. "I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable. I just thought we had a connection." Others were angry. "You're being dramatic. I didn't do anything wrong." One just said, "You can't avoid me forever." HR eventually had to get involved in an official capacity. They moved Cameron to a different shift and told them there was to be no contact with me. Cameron apparently didn't take it well and ended up quitting 2 days later. I thought that would be the end of it. But a week after Cameron quit, I walked out to my car after work and found a note under my windshield wiper. "You ruined everything. I know you have that notebook. I want it back. It's mine." I gave the note to the police. They tried to trace Cameron's whereabouts, but it turned out the address they'd given for the carpool was fake. The apartment complex said no one by that name had ever lived there. HR discovered that even Cameron's employment application had inconsistencies, a disconnected reference number, a possibly falsified previous employer. It's been 2 months now. I haven't seen Cameron or gotten any more messages, but I installed a dash cam in my car and a security camera at my apartment door. I check my back seat before I get in every single time. I vary my routine obsessively. I never take the same route 2 days in a row. The police told me Cameron might have moved on, that sometimes when people like this don't get the reaction they want, they find someone else to fixate on. That thought should comfort me, but instead, it just makes me feel guilty. Did I pass this problem on to someone else? Is Cameron out there right now in someone else's carpool, writing down their license plate number in an apartment building? I should have trusted my instincts earlier. The weird questions, the observation about my grocery store trip, the route I'd taken. Those were all warnings I ignored because I didn't want to seem paranoid or unfriendly. I kept telling myself I was overreacting, right up until I saw my name written dozens of times in that notebook. Now I drive alone, and I probably always will. The 45-minute commute seems like a small price to pay for the certainty that no one is in my car documenting my life, learning my patterns, planning whatever it is they were planning. Because I still don't know what Cameron's endgame was, and that might be the scariest part of all. After gaining weight during the pandemic, I decided last summer that I needed to get serious about fitness. I tried doing it alone, YouTube videos, running in my neighborhood, but I couldn't stay motivated, so I started looking for a personal trainer. I found Marcus through Instagram. He had about 15,000 followers, posted workout videos and transformation photos of his clients, and his rates were reasonable. His profile said he did in-home training sessions for people who were uncomfortable at gyms, which was perfect for me. I sent him a DM, and we scheduled a consultation call. On the phone, Marcus sounded professional and knowledgeable. He asked about my goals, my fitness history, any injuries I needed to work around. We agreed on twice-a-week sessions at my house. He said he'd bring all the equipment we'd need and that he'd create a personalized plan for me. The first session went great. Marcus showed up exactly on time, set up resistance bands and dumbbells in my living room, and put me through a tough but manageable workout. He was encouraging without being pushy, corrected my form, explained the purpose of each exercise. I felt like I'd made a good choice. We'd been training for about 3 weeks when I started noticing small things. Marcus would arrive a few minutes early and text me from his car, which was fine, but then I'd see him still sitting there after I read the message, just watching my front door. During sessions, he'd ask questions that seemed to go beyond normal trainer-client conversation. Did I live alone? Was I seeing anyone? What was my work schedule like? I told myself he was just being friendly, making conversation during rest periods. But then during our 7th session, I went to get water from the kitchen, and when I came back, Marcus was looking at the photos on my bookshelf, not just glancing, picking them up, studying them. He quickly put the frame down when he heard me and said, "Sorry, I was just admiring the pictures. You have a nice family." The thing is, those photos included pictures from vacations with specific locations visible in the background, family gatherings at my parents' house, information I hadn't shared with him. After that session, I checked my home office. I'd left my laptop closed on my desk, but now it was open slightly, like someone had lifted the screen and not quite closed it all the way. My filing cabinet drawer, where I keep important documents, wasn't fully shut. I couldn't prove Marcus had gone in there, but I was the only one home, and it hadn't been like that before his session. I decided to set up my old laptop in the living room before our next session, positioned so its camera would capture the room while appearing like I'd just left it there. I told Marcus I had to take a work call during our session and stepped into my bedroom for 10 minutes. When I reviewed the footage later, my stomach turned. The moment I left the room, Marcus stopped exercising. He went straight to my kitchen and opened drawers. He took photos of mail on my counter with his phone. He walked down my hallway and opened the door to my bedroom. Just looked inside, didn't go in, but he stood there for almost 30 seconds. Then he came back, picked up my phone from the coffee table, and tried to unlock it. When that didn't work, he set it back down and resumed exercising like nothing had happened. I felt violated. This person I'd invited into my home, trusted with my physical well-being, had been using our sessions to snoop through my life. I texted him that evening saying I needed to cancel our remaining sessions due to a schedule change at work. He responded asking if we could continue on weekends instead. I said no, that I needed to pause training for a while, and that I'd reach out if things changed. He didn't take it well. Over the next 2 days, I got 7 messages from him. First asking if he'd done something wrong, then saying he'd give me a discount, then accusing me of wasting his time, then apologizing for that message. Finally, I really think we should talk in person. I can come by tomorrow at our usual time. I didn't respond. I blocked his number and his Instagram account. I thought that would be the end of it. 3 days later, I went for a run in my neighborhood. I'd gone about 2 miles when I noticed a car driving slowly behind me. It was Marcus's car, a gray SUV with a dent on the driver's side door that I'd seen in his driveway when he loaded equipment. He was just crawling along, keeping pace with me. When I stopped and turned around to walk home, he drove past, but I saw him turn at the next block. I ran the rest of the way home and locked all my doors. That evening, he sent me an email. I don't know how he got my email address since I'd only contacted him through Instagram. The subject line was, "Did I see you today?" The body of the email said, "I thought I saw you running earlier. You should really stretch more before cardio. Your form's going to lead to injuries. Let me know if you want me to help with that. I'm around anytime." I forwarded the email to the police and filed a report. They talked to Marcus, and he claimed it was a coincidence that he'd been in my neighborhood, that he had another client nearby. He said the email was just him being a concerned trainer. I stayed at my sister's place for a week. The officer told me unless he made a specific threat or violated a restraining order, which I didn't have enough evidence to get, they couldn't arrest him for driving on public streets or sending an email. When I came back, I found a package on my doorstep. No return address, but it had my full name and address on the label. Inside was a fitness journal, the kind trainers use to track client progress. The pages were filled out with my name, detailed notes about my weight, my measurements that Marcus had taken during our first session, but also things he shouldn't have known: my birthday, my employer's name, my parents' address. The last page had a workout plan specially designed for me for the next 6 months. At the bottom, he'd written, "Looking forward to continuing our journey together. See you soon." I took the journal to the police. This time, they took it more seriously. They brought Marcus in for questioning. He admitted to sending the package but said it was a gift, that he'd compiled the information from things I'd told him during sessions. The problem was, I hadn't told him half of that information. He'd found it somehow. Maybe from mail in my house, maybe from searching my name online, maybe from documents he'd photographed. The detective said they'd warned Marcus to stop all contact with me, but without proof that he'd obtained the information illegally, they couldn't charge him with anything. They suggested I get a restraining order based on the pattern of behavior. I filed for one, and after a hearing where I presented the emails, the package, and the doorbell camera footage of him driving slowly past my house multiple times, the judge granted a temporary order. For 2 months, everything was quiet. I'd almost started to relax. Then one morning, I walked out to my car and found that someone had left a set of dumbbells, the same ones Marcus had brought to our sessions, on my front porch. No note, nothing, just the dumbbells. I called the police immediately. They collected the dumbbells as evidence, said they talked to Marcus again. He denied leaving them, said he'd sold that set of dumbbells weeks ago. The police couldn't prove otherwise. That was a month ago. Since then, I've installed a full security system with cameras covering every angle of my property. I don't run in my neighborhood anymore. I joined a gym, a big, crowded one where there's always people around. I park in different spots every time. I vary when I leave for work. Sometimes I see a gray SUV in traffic and my heart starts racing before I realize it's not his. Sometimes I wonder if he's watching my house from a distance, from somewhere my cameras can't see. The restraining order means he's not supposed to come near me, but that package showing up after the order was granted makes me think he doesn't care about legal consequences. I never got fit. The whole experience made me afraid to be vulnerable in my own home, afraid to trust anyone offering to help. I think about how Marcus had complete access to my house twice a week for almost a month. How many times did he go through my things when I wasn't looking? What else did he learn about me that I don't even know he knows? The detective told me that some people see their clients as more than just clients, that they build parasocial relationships and convince themselves there's a connection. But Marcus wasn't delusional. He was calculated. He used the access I gave him to gather information, to learn my vulnerabilities, to map out my life, and I invited him in. I unlocked my door and let him walk right into my home. I still train, but now I do it at the gym surrounded by people, where no one knows my address or my schedule, where I'm just another face in a crowd of strangers. It's not as convenient, but convenience stopped mattering the day I found my laptop open and my drawers disturbed. Safety matters now. Distance matters. The ability to walk away without someone knowing where I live, that matters most of all.